Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent game to share with you from round 1 of Tata Steel Chess 2025. On the white end, Gukesh, his first official game as world champion, and he's playing against Anish Giri. With the home field advantage, playing here at Tata Steel. This game starts out as a Grunfeld, a reversed Grunfeld with d4. And in just a couple more moves, this is looking like a Catalan opening by transposition. So queen will be the one to hunt this c pawn, and in this game, it's tracked with tempo. This queen is not going to feel too comfortable for long being on c4, this open file. So rook c8 will be nearby. Let's see where this queen's next post will be. Some room is made for the queen with e4. So she hops to it just in the nick of time. No fancy discoveries now. Bishop c5. This is a hole. Got a couple pieces on that point. Some aggressive play here by Gukesh. This follow-up move, Bishop g5, is saying already, I'm prepared to sacrifice a piece. I say this because there's this pin, and the knee-jerk reaction to Bishop g5 is to question it, h6. And if you simply back off, there really isn't enough justification for provoking h6. h6 is healthy, giving black a flight square. So what's the big idea? Well, he drops back, he meets h6 with bishop h4. Now, on the surface, this looks like a beginner-like move. I mean, isn't the bishop getting trapped? It is. This is what he was prepared to do before playing bishop to g5. Giri takes him up on this challenge. He plays g5. We get the piece sacrifice for the two pawns, and in the end, we have this irritating pin. Now, before Gukesh goes for a line like this, before he played bishop g5, I'm sure he was aware, had some sense that the computer would be saying that it's going to be, reading slightly better for black. The evaluation here is around minus 0.7, nothing decisive. We're in for a sharp game ahead, where black has the more vulnerable king. So let's see how this plays out. e5 stops the e5 idea by white. Queen d2. Okay, she's pointing at a couple dark squares near the king, and there is a direct threat to swipe the knight, and then the bishop. Black unpins the knight. Bishop h6 follows, and from here we have king h7. No time to save the rook, unless you want to fall for a mate in 2. It's king h7, bishop takes rook, bishop takes bishop. Let's pause for a moment. Where do we stand material-wise? We're looking at knight and dark square bishop versus a rook and 2 pawns. White still the side here with the safer king. But with how this plays out, it's the white king who will be coming under some fire. White does have this extra rook, so in general it makes sense to open a file. f4 is on board. We're going to have an open f-file shortly, but at the same time there is an open diagonal towards the king. Sharp position ahead. From here, bishop e6, knight d5, knight b4, really hammering away at the d5 knight and clearing the way for a rook c2 move. After f4, second rank is a bit more vulnerable. Pawn takes on e5 from here, knight g4, and from here we have the rooks, this battery, I should say, formed on the d file right around the corner. For white is now knight f6 check, swiping the queen next. So this king gets out of the reach of the knight check. And follow-up from here is king to h1. Gets off of this check. Gets out of the way of bishop c5. Queen b6 moves at some point, not right away. Computer is leaning more towards the following. It likes queen f4, and then wants to park the queen here on this f3 square. All right, in this one, the king simply gets off of this diagonal. The rook enters. Black is for choice here. This is considered a winning advantage. Notice the clock times. Not a whole lot of time remaining. These players are gaining 30 seconds when they make a move. They get that increment. And no bonus time until move 40. Move 40, you gain 50 minutes. Still some moves to get in. We're at move 24 at this stage. Follow-up is queen f4. Knight takes knight. And the response to this is queen f3. Now, why isn't the knight captured? Well, let's have a look at this. Some really interesting continuations, some sharp tactics in this one. If pawn captures knight, black would take with the bishop, and this recapture on d5, neither option would be good here for white. I'd like to touch on each to demonstrate. So if white responds here with bishop takes bishop, here's how play would follow. Rook takes h2 check is there. And then bishop c5 check, and this is a disaster. Rook f2, you swipe the rook with check. Rook d4, well, the rook is pinned, there's queen takes bishop to follow. What about the other capture in this position right here? What would happen if bishop takes d5 is met with rook takes d5? Well, we would see a beautiful queen sacrifice. Queen takes rook is there. And after bishop takes queen, this queen will be won in a few moves from now. Let's see what that looks like. These three pieces are enough to track the white queen. Rook takes h2 would be there. Bishop c5 check. Bishop takes rook check. Only move here, knight e3 check, and finally the king has to play to this e2 square and walk into a discovered check. The queen will be won next. Decisive advantage here for black. So this is why Gukesh is not responding to this capture on d5 with pawn captures knight. He backs off with the queen here. This knight isn't going anywhere. It is in a pin. Follow up from here, queen to b6. This was one of two winning ideas here for black. The other was to swipe the bishop and then pounce on this e3 square, a massive fork to follow. But queen b6, the other winning approach, really keying in on these dark squares. Look at the intersection point f2 and e3. 3 pieces on each. Follow up from here, pawn takes knight. Rook f2. This rook is poison. In the game, queen c3 is played. If rook takes rook, there would follow knight takes rook check, and then knight takes the other rook with a discovered check. So you got to move the queen here. Queen c3 it is. Best in the computer's eyes, it says just play bishop f5 straight away, get out of danger here. But considering the time, there's going to be mistakes around this point. About 4 minutes and change for Giri, about 40 seconds for Gukesh at this point. We have bishop b4 first, and only then bishop to f5. Queen g5 follows, very active post, pressure on a couple pieces, many different checks potentially there for the white queen. Follow up, bishop f8, queen check. Best in the computer's eyes says just get out of the check. Giri plays it in a bit more of an aggressive way, works himself into a self-pin, just playing with whatever you feel is intuitively best at this stage. Not a whole lot of time for each player. They've been playing off of the increment for many moves now. Follow up from here is rook d to e1. Now this covers the e4 square. This bishop e4 move can hit in many lines. So I'd like to illustrate one of them. If instead of this move, h3 is played, this is where we could see rook takes bishop. And now what would you do as white? If king takes rook, your options here, king takes rook, pawn takes knight. In both cases, bishop e4 is deadly. So touching on this one first, this is killing. There's only one move here for white, to block with the rook. Pretty sad, but your only move. And that runs into a check and then checkmate. And if you take the knight here, we would still have bishop to e4. Notice the queen is there securing the bishop. We don't need the knight. And right around the corner, there is an unavoidable discovered check here for black. This is a winning position. So we might say at this point with rook d to e1, white's covering the bishop e4 idea. Follow up, queen takes b2. And from here we have h3. This is a blunder. What is best is rook takes rook check, and some move here that's considered equal, queen d2, mixing attack with defense. All right, in this one, we see, in response to queen takes b2, we see h3. Big blunder here. Giri follows up in the best way, and that is bishop e4. Now what are you supposed to do here as white? In the game, it's rook takes rook. What's happening if bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, or pawn captures knight, or even queen takes knight? In all cases, black's response will be rook takes rook, and this will be leading to checkmate. Let's see what this looks like. You take like this, there you go, chop, recapture, mate on h2. And if you take with the rook, same story, boom, boom, mate on h2. And taking with the queen or the pawn, it's the same story. We take here, next up, queen takes on g2 for mate. So, in this game, after bishop to e4, it is rook takes rook, knight takes rook check, king to g1, and now, big moment in the game. Pop quiz. How would you continue here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, take note of the times. Giri has 41 seconds. He makes his next move. He only had, he made the move with only 2 seconds remaining on the clock. The move he played was a blunder. He played queen to b6, setting up a knight discovery. Also there defending the bishop. There's a big issue with queen to b6. I imagine if Giri had maybe even just 1 minute more, 2 at most, I believe he would have spotted this, but it was not meant to be. He didn't find this top move, and what a star move it would have been. The winning move here for Giri was knight g4. Did any of you spot that one? Really beautiful move. What's happening with it? Some defense over the bishop and an attack on f2 and g2. White doesn't have a good response now to the queen entering on one of these two squares. Also, the fancy checks here, well, a check here on d8 goes nowhere. Queen d8, king g7. King h7 is asking for trouble. This goes nowhere. King g7 is there. What would happen here after knight g4? Let's look at white's options. You take the knight with the pawn or the queen, checkmate. The only other options to touch on, bishop takes bishop and rook takes bishop. Let's look at each briefly. If bishop takes bishop, we would have check and then checkmate. You could also switch the order. And if rook takes bishop, only one winning path. It may be tempting here to follow up, getting to the back rank straight away, but that would go nowhere. Queen b1, white could simply block. The winning move here for black would be to first insert a check on b6. Now what do you do as white? King f1, mate on f2 would be there. You would have to go to the corner here, and now the king has stepped away from f1, and this is where the queen now comes down to rank 1, and white could only block, and this will lead straight to checkmate. All right, this star move in this time pressure situation with only 41 seconds remaining, knight g4 not spotted, unfortunately for Giri. Queen b6 in this game. What was overlooked? Well, the queens can now come off. Queen f6. Got to exchange the queens. And in the resulting simplified ending, this is completely winning now for white. There's no way to successfully stop this passed pawn. So it just plays out for a few more moves, saving the rook there and just pushing the passed pawn, trying to give the knight a kick and another kick. After rook to e7, move 42, Giri resigns. If the game continued, you move the knight, you simply advance the pawn, and you have to sacrifice the knight for the pawn. You could even take the pawn here with check first and then swipe the knight. This is, of course, completely winning for Team White. But in this one, it only goes as far as rook to d7 here, and Giri resigns. So really fantastic game here, very sharp, really kicking off with this idea of bishop g5, h6 backing off there, going for the piece sacrifice. Did any of you spot that star move, knight to g4? Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.